And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Jason Leyva here with the Fort Worth Community Arts Center. We would like to welcome you folks to another fabulous edition of our Boxed Lunch episodes. We have a fantastic talent with us today. So excited to welcome the one and only Brandi Pace. How you doing today, Brandi?
I'm doing all right. Thanks so much for having me. How are you?
I am doing very well. Made it through another weekend, anxious to tackle another week, and just living the dream. Brandi, we're so excited to have you. Before we get going, do you mind just taking a second and introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah, my name is Brandi Pace. I officially call myself a Fort Worthian because I've been here for 13 years, so I claim it. I claim it now. I am a musician and educator. I am founder and executive director of a nonprofit, Decolonizing the Music Room, that works on centering racially minoritized voices in music ed. And I am a Ph.D. student, and in better times, I'm a slightly more frequently gigging musician. I get to play around Fort Worth, mostly jazz and old time music, do some presenting, do some really cool stuff with kids in other configurations, and just, I kind of get in where I can fit in.
You have quite a resume from what I've seen and what I've researched. So also a very familiar asset to Arts Fifth Avenue over on south side of Fort Worth too. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been with Arts Fifth Avenue. I gauge it by my oldest child because he was a baby. This is going to be year 13. I'm currently an artist in residence there. What I do the most is I work with children during the summer, working with their jazz choir, with their summer playhouses, and I get to perform here and there. I'm actually coordinating a music festival that, you know, fingers crossed, since it's been rescheduled till March, will actually happen. And it's under the programming of Arts Fifth Avenue. So I love Arts Fifth Avenue. I love Gracie Tune, and you know, they're family at this point.
Oh yes, they are a very, very special group over there, and some fabulous programming as well. So thank you for all of those contributions indeed. So Brandi, what is on your lunch menu today?
Okay, so before I say what's on my lunch menu, I have to admit, I hate to cook. So I cook for survival and just for it not to taste bad. So I'm gonna saute some shrimp because it's very easy and I love shellfish. And then I'm just gonna make like a broccoli cauliflower mix to go on the side. Very easy, not too elaborate.
Awesome. I am letting Campbells do the work today. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm a huge fan of fall. I love hot soups and things like that. And again, you just can't go wrong. I'm going with some Campbell's chunky sausage gumbo and grilled chicken today. So I think the only thing that I'll be cooking, I have a little piece of toast right there waiting to go down in the toaster. So I don't want to completely skirt my responsibilities of cooking for boxed lunch today. So I'll be burning some bread and warming up some soup as well. So, all right. So, Brandi, before we get into all of the fun information, do you mind telling us just a little bit about the ingredients that are going into your lunch and just an overview of how you prep it?
Yeah, so I have my thawed shrimp. I like to buy it raw because when I cook it, the flavoring seals in better. I sound gourmet. It's like the most basic cooking ever for me. And I've got my very fancy steamed bag of vegetables. Still fresh, but easier and already portioned. Have my butter, and everything else is just basic seasoning.
Sounds great. All right, you ready to get into it?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to open up my can, pour it in the soup bowl, and turn on the heat while you get going. While we're getting things prepped and started here, Do you mind just telling us a little bit about how you're holding up, and how has COVID-19, along with all of the other challenges we've faced here in 2020, how's that affected you, and how are you holding up these days?
Yeah, so I always reference the meme with the dog sitting amidst the flames, when everything's fine. Um, that's every day, all day. I think is like, this is fine, this is fine. Wake up to a new news story, it's fine. Okay, everyone's around in masks. It's totally fine. So I think, you know, like so many people, I'm in survival mode, trying to find joy where I can, realizing there are a lot of lifestyle changes. Some stuff I am finding a little joy in is that I'm such a homebody, and socializing I enjoy, but it, you know, like it's a bit draining, and I need like my recovery time. And so, you know, the socialization is like, we Zoom and we talk. I wish I could see you in person, but, and I kind of retreat into my little cocoon very easily because I'm already here, right?
Yeah. Well, it looks like you are doing well. Have your challenges been more personal or professional, or do you find that it's pretty much even across the board?
So I think it's both, but I think the proportion of personal to professional has changed. When the quarantine first hit, it was professional. I was still teaching grade school music. There are a lot of logistics surrounding just, you know, being able to see my students, not knowing if I see them again, all kinds of things, figuring out work. But from a personal standpoint, it had gotten to a point of me feeling so overwhelmed, and the day-to-day being stressful in a way that a lot of people can relate to, that like having to stay in was almost like having to recover in certain ways as well, while, you know, the world's falling apart at the same time. So yeah, and then I feel like as it shifted, you know, there have been different levels of fear and just wondering in terms of what am I going to do, what are my kids going to do. And then at the same time, professionally, because of what the nonprofit does, as Black Lives Matter, like this particular incarnation has ramped up again. Personally, there's a lot of connection to that issue and like fear, and, you know, seeing my Black family and wondering what that means for us. And then professionally, having a lot of people who are suddenly turning their attention to these issues in a new way, and at the same time the work ramping up, which created some really great connections, but also, you know, living in that headspace that also affects my personal life can be stressful at times. And then now with the PhD program, I think I underestimated the effect of doing a PhD for the first time and being completely isolated. I'm so grateful to University of North Texas for deciding to be virtual and feeling like I don't have that risk COVID-wise. But I'm learning that, you know, it's taking some adjustment to do that, being fairly isolated.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, being in the educational process, can you tell us a little bit about, obviously it sounds like you're all virtual. What are some of the challenges that you're facing? I mean, I imagine a PhD is hard enough in person. And, you know, I know that the education debate is one of those top things that people are going round and round about. Are you finding it to still be successful, even though there's challenges? Are you able to lean into it and engage with that process?
So I think I am, but I think what's really necessary now is to ask what success is even supposed to look like. And it means something very different. You know, like in a virtual world, that's not just because it's virtual, but because we're also against the backdrop of a global pandemic.
Yes.
What is success? And there's a lot more that has to do with mental health and safety and connection, I think, in a different way. And I know people have been handling virtual and hybrid and face-to-face very, very differently, but I feel like there's some areas where thinking in that way, I've been fairly successful. But then there are more practical things, like I have a teaching fellowship and I also teach undergrads. And a lot of what we're teaching is just literally how to make music. Well, you know, there's a lag in sound. And so it's like, how do we make music together? How do I effectively assess how they're making music? How do I ensure that they're really understanding what I'm giving them? And then there's so much about music making that is in-person interaction based off of cues and expressions and body language and all of this that,
Yep.
you know, is gone or is lessened greatly.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
Now you talk about music as well. I'm really curious to hear about the Decolonizing the Music Room, which you're a founder and executive director of. I think this is a really, really encouraging and wonderful program. Do you mind talking a little bit more in depth about what all that entails?
Yeah, so our nonprofit's mission is to, sorry, I'm the multitasking.
That's it.
Our nonprofit's mission is to center Black, Brown, Indigenous, and Asian voices in education. Because in music education, as music education has functioned since U.S. music education has happened, it's kind of gone how the society has gone. Like there's a dominant narrative, and it's centered in the music ed. It's very much white Western European classical aesthetics and importances and history. So it's grown out of, like, you know, just as a Black woman, my own personal feelings about what needs to be represented. And we basically have kind of 3 areas. We have a Facebook group, which is, the membership has gotten really large, and it serves as a dialogue space, a learning space, and we function a little differently than other Facebook groups. I always say that social media is not so much a baby anymore. We're learning how to use it in ways that engage people more deeply in a way that we just, you know, didn't have good practice at doing before. So that's one part, and kind of having people rethink the way they engage in dialogue. We have a website which has amazing contributors and has a lot of resources on it. And that serves to get the information out there in a way that is meaty and accessible and free, and provides an example of a model of compensating people who contribute. And then the third part is training, consulting sessions. So my deputy director and I do a fair amount of presenting, a little bit of consulting. So we presented to nonprofits, school districts. I've done some work with some traditional music centers. I've done some consulting with companies, and hopefully in the future, it will be something where people come to our nonprofit and not only we go to others, but we work with a lot of teachers at this point, and we're trying to grow that and get to a point where we're able to work with more people over time. It's more common to have a one-shot thing in music education. And, you know, it might start you off and light a fire, but we really want to start to build dialogue that grows over time, and people go back and apply, and they come back to us, and we work out what they experienced, what worked, what didn't, and, you know, really make some lasting change.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, what inspired this? Did you find that you were having trouble finding music that was representative of this cause, or was it the opposite, where you were aware of a lot of it and it just wasn't out there? What really inspired this undertaking? Because it seems like it would be huge.
Mm-hmm. So it's closer to the latter. So, you know, Black, Brown, Indigenous, and Asian is kind of the umbrella term we use that, you know, doesn't speak for everyone, but speaks to those who are racially minoritized, who, because of however they're identified racially, are treated as a minority, whether they're, you know, in actual numbers minority or not. And when I talk to people who are within those communities, we have shared experiences of being in environments where, like, we know a lot of stuff about our culture, we know a lot of stuff about our music, we know people who are doing this great work, but they're not being included. Or we look in our books and we see our music misrepresented, or the history misrepresented, or a great deal of omission. Or we go to trainings and we realize that the faces look the same and the people who write the books, there's just a lot less representation. And, you know, we're out here, we're not hard to find, the history's not hard to find, but we have to shift how we think as a field and not assume that things that are treated as most important are most important, and things that are not there, we can't assume they're not there because they don't exist or because they have less importance. Because then our kids grow up thinking that. Yeah. And then the cycle just continues generation after generation. So that's what it grew out of. And it really was a combination of seeing that as it played out in music education, but also with my racial equity work in Fort Worth ISD and my own teaching and seeing the experiences of my own students and the resources they had access to, the resources they didn't have access to. So yeah, a lot went into it.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So can you give us a couple of examples of some musical artists that we should be looking into, and give us that ability to get out there and check them out? Who would you recommend off the top of your head?
And you mean like in terms of the kind of stuff that we would include in the nonprofit?
I just want to know who I can find for some great music that I'm unaware of.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so I can kind of make the connection. So I have a friend who is an amazing musician. His name is Jake Blount, Blount. He released in May an album called Spider Tales, and I mean, it's just so good. He fiddles, he plays banjo, he is like amazingly knowledgeable about history, so all his song choices are informed by all this great historical stuff. And Spider Tales comes from Anansi, the trickster, and the legacy of those stories throughout Black culture and in the Americas. And it's just an amazing album, so I suggest everyone listen to that. I've also been listening to a lot of No Name. Do you know No Name?
I do not, but I promise I'm going to check it out. I'm obsessed with music, and again, when I hear these sort of stories, I feel so ignorant from my lack of awareness. I always think I'm somewhat up to date, and I just love it when I'm able to find new artists, new material, and anything to expand my own mindset, because I just think it's one of the most important artistic elements out there, music. It just continues to inspire and emotionally connect with me, and it's one of the few art forms that has retained its potency over the years, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, there's a million people out there, so I don't consider myself current. I hear what I hear, and it sounds great. No Name is a poet rapper out of Chicago, and she just she talks about a lot of relevant life experiences that I personally connect with, but also she just sounds really good. The production's wonderful, like her phrasing and her word choice as a poet. I really enjoy it. I've had her on repeat for a long time.
Wow.
BTS is somebody that we're listening to in my household a lot. They released a Tiny Desk, and I think it sent my kids and me down like a rabbit hole of BTS-ness.
Nice. Yeah, Tiny Desk is a great program and a wonderful way to search and find some artists that you may not be familiar with as well. So hopefully at the end of this particular episode, we'll try to get some links up on those artists. And if we're unable to find it, maybe you can circle back around and put a couple of links in there so we're able to check those folks out and all grow musically and hopefully personally as well. Now, you talked a little bit about your band. I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Pace and Barber is your duet group. Is that correct?
Yes, Pace and Barber is my duet group.
And do you mind telling us a little bit about that? And have you guys had any virtual gigs? Are you rehearsing on Zoom? Are you still together?
So we're together and like just longingly waiting until we can physically be together to play. So Dean Barber is my bandmate in Pace and Barber, and he is actually like the first person who taught me banjo. I say taught because I found him through someone online, and I met him in person, and he gave me a lesson. I was like, hey, I've got this band and our guitarist and singer's leaving, so can you join the band? And I always joke like that was the last banjo lesson. He used me for guitar the rest of the time. But he's responsible for my introduction into the old time community. He's like a super big history buff, so he has taught me a lot about the geography of where the music's come from and different people to listen to. And we played with the trio for a while, and then it got to a point where it just naturally turned into a duo. I think first we had a gig where only the two of us could make it, and it was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then somebody else asked, and then, eventually it turned into a thing. And we've done tiny bit of virtual stuff, but it's been more like presenting, talking. As far as actual performing, we perform when we're in person. Done a couple of festivals, done some events, done some really fun like farmers market style things where you get to sit out and play, and we're having fun and I'm learning stuff from him and we get paid at the end. So we're both very anxiously awaiting the time that we'll be able to be in person in a sustainable way.
Sure, absolutely. So it sounds like you're staying busy even with all of the complexities of the world around us.
Yeah, there's lots to do, and I'm happy to be busy, even though being busy is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking forward, how do you see the arts adapting through all of this, not just with music, but also just in general in terms of how we perform, how artists prepare? How do you see that moving forward?
So the first thing I noticed that is changing is, things shut down. There was a scramble to transfer all the things that were in person to find an online model. And what happened first was a, just pay and contribute as you can kind of situation. And then people started asking, what does it mean pay-wise for us to have artists doing things virtually? And people started to answer those questions. And so what I see continuing to happen is understanding compensation for artists for their labor and their work and their product, and that it's the same thing virtual or in person. And I'm seeing people understanding that, and I only see that growing and enhancing, especially because some people are doing things in person, but we're not at the point yet where we're not having to rethink this. Another thing that I love that I know is going to happen more is just the level of collaboration with people that you had access to virtually before, but because it wasn't a necessity, people just weren't in that mindset to coordinate things in that way. So I've done things with people I never would have imagined connecting to, even though, I knew they were on Facebook, right, and I knew they existed. But now there are a lot of things that would have just been like very nice ideas that by necessity people are making happen. And I think we're going to have a lot more innovation in that way, in ways that continue to keep people safe, but also just realizing that some things are really, really cool. Yeah. And you can do that virtually, and you can continue to do that even when you can be in person.
Yeah, I keep referencing, I caught Lollapalooza, I guess it was this summer. And prior to that, in February and March, I was really questioning, how people were going to be able to have that impact in a virtual realm. And it was just really inspiring to see the imagination and the inventiveness of the music industry with the way that they encapsulated that. And some of the virtual performances were just incredible. And so it was really neat to see that swing from people going from what I have, just a basic background, to all of these really, really inspiring and creative ways to be able to connect that emotional quality to music. And so it's been really, really inspiring to see a lot of these artists tackle this virtual platform, so to speak. And I know, I hope anyway, that it just becomes an enhancement when we do find a way to get back safely with one another, because it's really opened the doors to things that I probably never would have seen had all this not taken place. So,
and you know what, that a really good example of that, we were talking about tiny desk concerts. Jacob Collier did a tiny desk concert, and he just recorded 4 of himself,
right?
And they improvised together and they recorded together, and it still had a live feel, and he even did like some like talking to himself conversationally, all kinds of really cool stuff that we know people could do, and maybe they would do it. We know he's an innovative artist in general, but even stuff like that is like, you know, wow, that isn't something I would have expected to see in that format before all of this happened.
Yeah, I really hope it continues, because there really has been a lot of heartfelt insight into musicians. Normally you don't get to see that behind the curtain stuff with a lot of these artists. It's really just what they're presenting in terms of their art. And it really has kind of pulled that veil back on how people go about creating and participating in that art form. So, all right, how's your lunch? Oh, you're okay?
Y'all get a little bit louder. Thank you.
How's your lunch coming there?
I think it's done.
Nice. Well, we are right on track. I'm curious, you said you love shellfish, and I saw that you've spent some time, and I believe went to school up at Howard University in DC. And I've been in that area myself. Is that where you got your fondness for shellfish, up there in the Chesapeake Bay?
You know, I loved it from childhood, but I definitely love being in a place where it was so much more affordable and I could pay out. I had my first child while I was in grad school up there, and I just remember it got to a point where like the seafood place down the street knew me and knew I was ordering crab legs and just stuck a little bit of extra in there for me. I miss it very much.
Yes. There was nothing better than just walking in and then walking out with a cardboard box stuffed with soft shell crab.
I have a friend who had like an annual feast. Like a barn style table. She would just like put the paper down and lay it all out. Oh my
goodness. I am with you 100% on the seafood up in the DC area for sure. All right, so it looks like you are moving on to plating. I'm going to start doing that same thing. While we're doing that, I was curious if you wouldn't mind talking about what helpful community resources are you seeing or using personally or professionally, and how can your organization be assisted or provide assistance to other artists and organizations?
Yeah, so what I've noticed a lot, the near South Side really got into gear really fast to try to figure out how can we financially help artists, what are some things we can do, you know, how can we make things sustainable for the future. And they've been a really good resource. I think as far as my organization, we're so new. We need donations. We really need to be able to have staff and to be able to fund programming. I really want to make sure that we're able to get information to educators in a way that is more affordable and accessible. And I really want to engage more with educators. You know, to start my Ph.D. program, I just left my job at Fort Worth ISD. I've been there for 10 years. And there are so many people there doing wonderful things. And the best connections I feel like I can make in the community first are with educators, artist educators, people who are working in administration who actually connect artists to educational spaces of all kinds. And I really want to grow that. Sometimes we have this disconnect where it's like music education, people who make music in the real world, whatever that is, right?
Sure.
And so connecting with artists and people who have the interest and understanding of how that can be together, I think is really good. You know, I'm just lucky to have friends who are in all kinds of spaces. I have friends at Booker T. Washington and some of these spaces that have such strong arts programming, but also have some freedom to bring in and include as they see fit. But it really does start from the administration down and really understanding how valuable it is to tap into the artistry that we have in the community.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So do you have any tips or tricks on how to stay sane mentally and physically engaged through all of this?
Yeah, at the beginning, I rode my bike a lot. That was really helpful, but I'm nursing a back injury now, so I switched to super light yoga, super short yoga, which has been really cool. I cannot recommend highly enough getting a pair of noise canceling headphones. So if you feel like you just need to shut out the world, just go and do your thing. Sometimes I put them on and I just like go out and walk. Make sure to get some sun. Those for me are really, really key. And then there are some things about just like having a routine, me personally, sitting in my house all day if I want to.
Right.
Because I can sink into some really, really bad habits. So like if I make sure if I want to do something with my hair, just, you know, just because I like it, or if I want to make sure to dress a certain way, or if I, you know, just like want to make sure that I do some routine related things that are not based on what someone else would want me to look or feel like,
sure,
but are just based on me having whatever care I feel is appropriate for my body, I think is good. But, you know, on the flip side, something that I think can really enhance your sense of self, I guess, is some things you can do that maybe outside you'd be more self-conscious about. So I'm going to be like super candid. Women are expected to shave their legs. It's just a thing. But, you know, it ends up taking a lot of effort, and then you wonder, are your legs shaved or not, or whatever. But that's one thing I chose, like quarantine hit, and I was like, I'm good. I can walk around in my house any way I want. So now I'm like, look at me. My body's great. I love my body. And I don't have to wonder if I have to have in the back of my head some self-conscious thing about how somebody else is going to look at me. I'm just like allowing myself to be. And that's just one example. That might not be for everyone, but I think it's a really good idea to find some things that you realize have been wrapped in having to be physically in your work environment, having to go out socially and see lots of people, and see if you can intentionally let that thing go and see how, you know, affirming it feels for yourself.
Yeah, that's some great points. You know, it's taken me back and forth. We go through so much me to we, and then usually circle back around to me again. And it's been extremely eye-opening, not only to see the world, but really the reflection of yourself and all of those things that were so prominent and you may have been unaware of before all of this. It's really, really becoming quite obvious some of the things that I personally feel I need to work on. And I just, again, I can't say it enough. I know we all struggle with the pandemic and the social unrest, but I just, the awareness that it has brought to mind is amazing. And I so hope we're able to grow from this and open ourselves up as people and not only individuals, but also as a community, because it has really, really created some awareness. And I hope we're able to grow from it and move forward for sure. So those are all some great points about just letting go of some of the things that are just socially imposed on us about how we should be and what we should be doing. And I really do anticipate some people are going to have some epiphanies about what is right and and good for them. So it's nice to know that you're doing well, and again, continuing to stay busy. So, Brandi, you got any words of wisdom or final thoughts for everybody out there before we show our wonderful lunches?
Yeah, I think something I keep in mind all the time is just be questioning, right? We're talking about things that are socially imposed. I think now's a really good time to ask, like, why are the things we think are important, why do we call them important?
Yes.
The way we think things need to be done, why do they need to be done that way? And there are so many people writing and recording and speaking and putting out all this wonderful content and information that, you know, frankly isn't new. It's just that now there's like a renewed, broadened attention on it.
Yeah.
And so at the same time that we're asking these questions, just like evaluating everything and the whys behind everything, you know, let that seep in there and really think about, like, if I think something's important for this reason, what might someone else think that feels completely flipped? And where might that be coming from? And, you know, what can I do with that? Just like keep a sense of questioning and fluidity about the things that we have accepted as, like, I have a professor who says capital T truths as like absolutes. There's so many things we call absolute that are not.
I could not agree more. Yeah, just really open your eyes, folks, and look around and see, is it everyone's truth or maybe just yours? And you know, one of the things that I've enjoyed so much about these Box Lunch episodes is getting to meet people that I just would not have come across had this not happened, and being able to.
We're all down the street from each other, right?
I know, literally. And it's just like, oh my God. So if we can carry that kind of commitment over to our real lives, I think we really have a chance. And yeah. I know people think things are just endlessly bad and there is no hope. I just refuse to believe it. And I know it might be a struggle, but that is what makes those successes so valuable to us, is when we really have to work for them. And so I hope we're able to continue to engage and embrace these challenges, because I don't think they're going to go away. I think we're simply going to have to find a way to change ourselves, which in turn, hopefully will change them in a broader picture. So some great stuff, great information, Brandi. All right, so are we ready to present?
Okay. This is my food.
Oh my goodness.
Fine.
It looks absolutely delicious. You've got some wonderful colors in there, fresh vegetables and shellfish. I'm going to give you a little insight to mine here if I can keep from spilling it on my computer there. Campbell's soup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. All right. So, Brandi, here's the most important question I'm going to ask you through the whole interview. How and where can we find you, keep up with you, and track and follow all the wonderful artistic things you've got going on?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So nonprofit-wise, decolonizingthemusicroom.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. Artists, and we have a YouTube channel, which is fairly new. Artist-wise, brandipace.com. I'm also on Facebook. Pace and Barber has a Facebook page. I have a YouTube. It's still light, but you know, worth following. And I think those are kind of the main things. I tend to be fairly Facebook engaged over everything else, so you can always find me there.
Awesome. Well, it has been a pleasure, and Brandi, I can't thank you enough for joining us and taking the time. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to take you up on that lunch menu there and see if I can't saute some shrimp and some steamed vegetables as well. So just very appreciative to have you, and can't thank you enough for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. I want to remind everybody before we sign off, today is the last day to register to vote. So please take that effort, make your voice heard. We need you now more than ever. And that wraps up another edition of Box Lunch. We'll be back next Monday. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember to be kind to yourself and to others. And with that being said, Brandi, lift your plate. We'll toast each other here. Bon appetit, everybody. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye, everybody.